Cinco, quatro, três, dois, um.
Good morning, everyone. Before introducing myself, I have an important piece of information. If you want to watch this session only in English, please follow the link on the chat. My name is Luiz Pladevall. I'm the Vice President of ABES São Paulo, and I have the great pleasure to continue this round of special sessions of Brazil Water Week, a week promoted by ABES and the most important international event on water carried out in the country. These special sessions are free and open to the public, and they will happen up to today. We have a very important session this afternoon, by the way. You can get on the link on the chat and subscribe and register for the next session. And follow the ABES channel. You can watch the sessions that we've already conducted. They are all saved on our ABES channel. From October 26 to 30, we will have 5 full days of Brazil Water Week. We will have over 50 hours of online content and over 100 experts from Brazil and other 16 countries. The website to register is also being sent in the chat. I'd like to thank our sponsors for Brazil Water Week: ABES-SP, AMIA, Suez, ANA, EGEA, Cedae, and Iguá Saneamento. To start our session, I turn the floor to the President of ABES São Paulo, Márcio Gonçalves de Oliveira, for his first participation and thank everyone here with us today. Márcio, the floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Pladevall. I'd like to thank Victor Faria, Elder Aragão, and Nagib Abrahão, everyone watching us. This is a very important day, closing our special sessions. This is the launch of a book discussing a very important topic, the use of GIS in basic sanitation companies. Technology, just to remember, and I started my professional career in topography and geodesia, and I was simple intern, and we didn't have so much technology, and we get to watch this technological advancement bringing benefits and opportunity for sanitation. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Nagib. He talked to us, he talked to ABES São Paulo, so that together with a few sponsors we could go beyond an idea and put it into action, to literally put it into action and publish this tool on the use of GIS. So I'm very happy, very satisfied, very pleased, Nagib, that we, in such a short time, we were able to produce such a high quality product that will provide all professionals in sanitation a great tool, a great instrument to support the use of GIS with more commitment. It's an unprecedented book. It's Brazilian, it's in Portuguese. It's unheard of in Brazil. So for us to be able to use this important tool, GIS. So I'm really pleased seeing that ABES and its partners and members can provide benefits to the sanitation industry, whether it is through training, through publications, or in this example, with the book. So this is my short opening, and I'd like to say thank you, Nagib. Thank you for bringing this opportunity for all of us in this sector. And now we will have a very interesting debate so that we can discuss the use of this tool and discuss topics of GIS in this sector. Márcio, thank you very much. I believe your words are a reflection of our work at ABES, which is bringing knowledge and spreading it. I think this is one of the great banners of our association, and as volunteers, we are quite pleased when we're able to deliver something for the community. And this book, as you said, which is unique in Brazil, is our line of use. We already did with non-destructive methodologies, and these are books that we are at the forefront of publishing. And I'd like to congratulate Nagib for his work. I followed up all the process, and it was wonderful. And the opportunity to have experts here like Victor and Elder, who will provide their view on how we are doing in Brazil in that topic. So before introducing our guests, I'd like to invite all of you to stay with us at the end of the debate for the launch of the book, GIS Applications for Basic Sanitation Companies. The topic here is the use of GIS in basic sanitation, history, aspects, uses, and challenges. I'll receive here today was very special guests, Elder Aragão, the geoprocessing manager of Embasa, the water and sanitation company from Bahia, Victor Faria, who is from the water and sewage company from the state of Rio de Janeiro, Cedae, and Nagib Abrahão, ABES-SP geoprocessing manager and author of the book, GIS Applications for Sanitation Companies. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank you all for accepting to participate, and I will go to, sorry, I still have a few more notes to give you. Those of you watching us, you can ask questions on the chat, and our speakers here will answer your questions. At the end, we will answer your questions, and our advisors are following up with the chat, and I will coordinate the debate at the end. This webinar video will be available at this channel and at the ABES website after it is over. So let's move on straight into the presentations. So I'd like to invite Elder Aragão to give the first presentation. Elder, the floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be able to represent Embasa in the state of Bahia here. I'd like to thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. I hope I can contribute for the discussion, for the debate we'll have this morning. And good morning to all of you watching us. My name is Elder Aragão. I'm a geoprocessing manager at Embasa, the water and sanitation company from the state of Bahia. I come from information technology, and I wound up finding myself in the GIS sector. I love this area. I've been working at it in 16 years in this company. So I'd like to tell you about the story about the implementation of GIS at Embasa. Embasa had a pilot project in 1995. So GIS has been implemented for a long time. We had the pilot project in 1995 in Salvador. Back then, we understood that we had geographical challenges, and we had to have tools for mapping to overcome these challenges. Embasa operates in almost the entire state of Bahia, and there are geographic challenges in Bahia. Simply in terms of size, it's a very large state, very dispersed state, So Embasa understood back in 1995 that it needed to use the GIS technology. So we conducted a pilot project, which was very successful. Back then, Embasa bought GPS kits, scanning tables, specific software for GIS, and we implemented a pilot. So if you are not familiarized with GIS, the power is it can unite maps and data. I can see things that traditional systems can't find. So from this pilot program, we expanded to other municipalities in the state of Bahia. So the GIS culture was installed in 95, 96, 97, 98. I joined the company in 2006, and we had a challenge that was tabled. Even though we already have a established GIS culture that started in 1995, we needed to take a new step in 2006 to have everything web-based. And back then, we tried to use open source tools so we would not have to bear software licensing costs. And that's the program I started leading called GeoWeb. We took all the cartography that came from desktop. I needed to have a software installed in my computer, my desktop machine. We imported it to a web environment, and we turned it into more and more a corporate GIS. GeoWeb now is in its 4th version, and now it is currently used by, I have data here, we have around 400 sessions per day accessing GeoWeb. GeoWeb was the first GIS in Brazil to be patented. Here in Brazil, you can't patent software, you can only register it. But we registered it with the National Institute of Intellectual Properties for Brazil, INPI, as the first GIS to be registered and made official. Since GeoWeb was made in-house, we could listen to and understand the needs of the end users. So we adapted its features and capabilities. So what do we have in GeoWeb today? We have basic mapping tools, but we also have interesting spatial analysis, and we have thematic maps. So with thematic maps, we can paint one consumer in one color, or a consumer that is not paying, or in a specific situation, we can paint these in colors in the map, and we can find where certain foci are. But we're not restricted to GeoWeb. GeoWeb is in its 4th version. From 2006 and 2009, we evolved to using satellite imaging, but we wanted more challenges. So we also implemented the geographical database, because we also used open tools. It's PostGIS. PostGIS GIS. It's a spatial database that so we can register water supply networks and sewage networks. So everything is done on this corporate foundation. With the PostGIS, with the spatial database, we can further enhance spatial queries. So we can do advanced querying using a specialized database when it comes to GIS. Additionally, we implemented mobility. So in addition to GeoWeb, which is a corporate tool, in addition to the spatial database, we now have GeoMob, which was our implementation using open source tools to provide everything GeoWeb has on the web to a mobile device, to a smartphone. Our cartography is precision cartography. This is standardized. Both in GeoWeb and GeoMob, we have precision cartography. And currently we have several unique features, and I'll talk about some of them before we get to the features. We use GeoWeb, GeoMob, and the spatial database to register networks, to have hydraulic modeling. We have GIS water. We have a new GIS tool as well. You can download it, Water GIS, and with PGIS, we have hydraulic modeling, and it's another scenario where we are using GIS. Additionally, we use it in the commercial area to take commercial decisions, to go to the field, to talk to consumers if they're home or not. We use GIS in the commercial area, and we also use it for the operational area. In the operational area, we have labor records to see what are the valves that are closed, how will they affect consumers. So these are the works we have in operations. We also have environmental work, licensing grants, environmental analysis using GIS, and we have it for the strategic level, where we don't think only about a single municipality but the whole state. So with the strategic GIS, we think, what is the level of service we're providing, both in terms of sewage and water supply? What are the municipalities we are providing service to? Which ones are we not? We divided the state in microregions for sanitation, microregions, using the GIS. The construction of these microregions was done using GIS. We plotted it onto the map, and we understood who is getting water from which main, and we could create microregions using GIS. So here at Embasa, GIS is already a culture that has been established. It has its use, it has its demand. We have regional offices throughout the state. We have people I call GIS experts. They know how to work with GPS. They know how to go to field, how to the ecosystem to feed into our database that we use in GeoWeb. So we have in GeoWeb whatever our regional offices are capturing in the field. So it's very challenging. And why is that? In the case of Salvador, for example, we have almost 100% of consumers that are georeferenced. That is a lot of people. So you have to go from home to home. We have to do this survey with the GPS, and we have, in keeping this cartography base up to date is also another challenge. So getting to the point, what are the challenges of maintaining a corporate GIS, particularly when it comes to sanitation? One of the challenges I see is to keep up with the urban challenges and the challenges that are inherent to the area of sanitation. Providing water, treating sewage and wastewater is complex, and keeping that up to date and translating that into a map, into GIS, it's even more challenging. The challenge is to act and keep the pace with the urban dynamics. We have municipalities in Bahia that are growing quite fast, particularly in the northern area and the seaside. And following that growth, so you can have a cartographic base that you can trust on, a base map. And this is a very major challenge. And drawing back to Nagib's book, which I had the chance to read, is to train people, both who will use and people who are developing the GIS. And I never saw a geographic database in college. You don't see that in computer science courses. I also teach, and we do not see that. The fact is that I took a master's course, took a master's degree in this area, but the market is not training people for this area. I think Nagib's book will contribute to that. I try to do that in postgraduate courses, show people in IT that there is a spatial database, that there is this system of geographic informations. And it's so special that you have a special name. Other systems are called information systems, but the geographic information system has its own name, GIS, the Geographic Information System. So keeping my team trained for it is another challenge. Since we went through the route of open source solutions, open source software, I need to be constantly training my team. We need to be constantly training and educating ourselves. So this is another challenge we need to pay attention to. Training, education, how to develop, how to code, how to maintain. And also maintaining yourself updated regarding the technologies. Another recent action that we did when it comes to information technology and GIS is to use the maps as services. What do you mean, Eldor? Before we needed to download the maps into the computer of our final user. Now we can export a service and they can access it without having to download anything to their computer. That drove up adherence. Another challenge is to educate our users, because often our end users still do not know, they're still not aware of the power of the GIS and what they can do with GIS in their hands. Often the end user does not understand that with a map you can make decisions, you can make better decisions. You can see things that on an Excel spreadsheet or a simple query on a traditional system, you won't see it. And Victor will talk about modeling a lot better than I will, of course, but you need to know if the neighborhoods are having an interference in one another. There is an interference. Is there something like that? With a map, we can do spatial analysis. So we can. So these are the challenges, the geographic challenges. This book will help in this. It will help me educate my end user. Are you familiarized with GIS? Do you know what you can do with GIS in your management? And then I'll be able to show that user that from the moment they have a map and spatial data, they can make better decisions. And any sanitation company will be more efficient. Currently, sanitation companies can no longer leave GIS aside. They need to implement this. We started quite early at Embasa in 1995, and due to investments from our IT department, we continued to invest in it. I obtained the images from the municipality of Salvador that helps me make more decisions, strategic decisions. So I'd say that this is an essential investment for sanitation companies to be able to keep up with the flexibility. Supplying water is not simple. It's something a lot more complex compared to other infrastructures. Even though I have already worked in other types of infrastructure, I think that sanitation has its particular challenges. That's my contribution. I'm excited to talk to you and to answer your questions. Once more, I'd like to thank ABES and Nagib for the invitation. Nagib reached out to me with the invitation personally, so it's an honor to represent Embasa, represent this company. I work with GIS in this company. I love it. And to conclude, GIS in our company has its own development, so we are free to download software, to proprietary software. We did a laboratory once. We sat down and we did research development. Now we are applying a little bit of AI in some of our modeling. So that's it. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here, and I'm open to answer any questions you might have. Elder, we are the ones that should thank you, because our goal here at ABES is to provide a view of how we're doing in Brazil. I'd like to congratulate you. Since 1995, you've been working with it, and you did not come from the area of engineering, but you brought the view from the IT side. Without IT, without georeferencing, how can you manage your assets if you don't know where they are? This is a culture change. It's great that you started way back in 1995. We know that Embasa has invested a lot in it, and it's awesome that you had managers above you that were peers that believed in your vision. Few people value it, and reinforcing what you said. Nagib's book will be an icon. even for universities. Now we will have textbooks to be able to implement it in universities, and this is the future. Without any further ado, we'll save it for the debate. Let's go over to Vitor. Thank you for your presence here. ABES is honored with your participation, and let's hear what you have to say, what is your view, and how Cedae is doing in this aspect.
Thank you. Thank you, Pladevall, Márcio, Aragão, Nagib mainly. Thank you for the invite. I'm very happy to be here. Such a busy year filled with ups and downs, so many things happening. It is indeed very positive to be at this Congress. It is amazing to be at Real Water Week and now this ABES event, an international event. And speaking of things that we actually enjoy, that we like, GIS, sanitation, and things we actually enjoy. So this is very important, and this is the right momentum. The industry needs support. We are at a critical development time, and that's what GIS is. It's about giving support to things being developed, to the development. I work at Cedae, Cedae. So I look after operation, major sanitation works. I'm heading this particular department, and my approach is always more water modeling, project designing, and operations. That's my background, and that's what I do. But I entered in this company. Then I was outsourced, and then in 2012 I became an engineer. But back in 2006, when I began working in policy control, I actually requested for purchase because what we do is we roadmap the quality control of all we take collection samples. Those samples will be analyzed in labs, and I actually requested to have the GPS uh, mapping out because and GPS, Google, the whole thing was just beginning, and we could actually analyze the roadmap that had been designed, and we saw very diverse things, all sorts of things, many municipalities concentrated, and I thought, wow, I've got this technical paper. I showed at the BWA at ABES. I showed it as a performance indicator for water sampling, for water quality sampling. So that's what it is all about, to see things and be able to run analysis within your area. So you can see things in maps, and it's very different from seeing them in tables. So what we call raw data. The analysts look at different quality control. They look at hundreds, pages and pages of information. And when you have a plotted map, it's actually easier because you can actually plot and then analyze and then compare and see things better. And I've been studying this. I took an interest in this particular topic, and you see that it kept its space within the industry. So speaking of GIS, but mind you, it's not just the one more technology that is coming out or that will take place. There are several uses that is proved, that is already evidence-based, fully evidence-based for the industry, in the industry, and it has a return because sometimes investments are quite high, but the return on investment is quite high too. So if it's a loss control project or operations control, an investment is justifiable because we're speaking of large industries. We're not speaking of small industries. So when we think of sanitation, when we think of this outlook, what can we do about it? You can actually place sanitation utility companies in a satellite plotting kind of tool. It has to be georeferential, referenceable. So we collect water, we bring them to water treatment stations. It goes automated to reservoirs. Then the water gets to households. So you see, there is maintenance, there is structure to support this, to collect sewer, to bring that to the station and give the adequate. So our business is very referenced, but I need to plot the entire company in a database. No, not necessarily. GIS, I've been saying this for a while. It will be as big as we wish. We will do as it works. Sometimes you may have areas where you have other ways of working that is already working, or you may attempt to run a pilot. You can run attempts, but that doesn't mean then you need to add all that to technology. It works really well. And there are areas that beyond comparison, really. And that is the truth. Here in our city, we are running a process of hiring our transformational base, and we have a pilot project initiative in the environment with a spatial database. That's our initiative. And that's where I started working and I started developing something exactly with this outlook. So you see, within hydraulics modeling, like we spoke before, we have GIS water that is speaking of legal software, like people do in Bahia. They work with EPANET, KGIS, and running. And I actually designed a model for the southern part of the city where Copacabana is. I actually showed this at ABES. I showed this. So it works very well and it ran very well because when you see hydraulic modeling in a map plotted and you see a panet or other programs, I've actually tested other benchmark tools. I actually benchmarked it and you see the size. It's major weight, it's major importance. So we can discuss open source, open software, open soft source, as we call it. And you can develop a proprietary software or open source, but they're actually proprietary, they're more expensive. They have a different kind of approach. And that is something that we constantly discuss, really. But you see, today, you need GIS. And the thing with GIS is with different areas, you have different people interested to have this view, that have this outlook, and they can develop within their own areas different applications. And that is what is so interesting. That is also available, this information is also available in the GIS book, because people will access the database, will find other data from the company to resolve the one problem. For example, you see risk analyses with softwares, etc. Say, wow, this is very interesting indeed. This is very nice. I want to see if this worked in this sense. He said, what problem do you want to solve? It's not just buying a software, run it and see that beautifully. So this is the objective, to solve issues, solve problems. Softwares are there to solve problems. We also have loss control. We have this other software that is the commercial that has georeferential enrollments that is also based for other studies. And for me, GIS is really part of that because you can do the hydraulic modeling and you can sectorize that, water sectorization. So major cities, for example, and projects that we made, that we tested, you have plotting that other agencies do that. Environmental agencies do that. So you can cross reference this data so that you can do digital modeling, digital plotting. So you can actually test the system's efficiency all the way to planning. You can also make changes as you go for investment. So also other things that we have tested that are quite easy is revenue recovery. You had Camuri, that is more far from the city, but it is a small, there's some data from the city, and the number of household stores actually was cross-referenced and cross-checked from the registries, from what I called enrollment previously. So we had information about real estate registry, and you can cross the data. So you see a small area. In 1 year, you could see that you had over a million, 1,500,000, if I'm not mistaken, only for re-registering. Actually, you could do it on Google, very easy. So clearly, you had a consumer, you had a different type of gain. We can have this different kind of gain. We've been working with the city that has GIS and metropolitan that also has its own GIS. So what they said about integration, when we spoke about integration with other companies, with other public service companies and cities, etc., what you have is an integration to see all interferences, to do the planning of the cities, planning of urban areas that today suffer precisely because of lack of planning. Today's sanitation companies and other utility companies have the same pains. They suffer due to lack of planning. And the plotting is absolutely essential. A proper roadmap or mapping and plotting is actually essential. I actually spoke to the city of Rio. If I'm not mistaken, the last flight that they're doing, they are making available, be part of Surbi, that is part of the group, that is part of GIS, part of the city. They make this data available, geographical data available for us as well. And the one flight like this, the overflight, had a very high cost. And today it has dropped tremendously. So you can map out the city, you can run the planning and develop applications with that. Now, within the company's management, so the use of dashboards, the use of the area control, operational control, what we call measuring losses studies. we can actually see that. We can see the demands. We can actually see and check where water is going, where I actually need to supply, and to help operational management. I remember the visit that we ran at ABES-SP showing that they had the one server only for water losses or shortage, and they would run that every 15 minutes, remember? So the one server just for water shortage, and that really impressed me. A very expensive server just to run shortage data. And I repeat, it was very expensive. So you see the power it has to show, and the director, the president will look at that and say, listen, it comes from top down, and it will get all the way into the user because people can see that in real time, the shortage. But when you can't see things, the system's capacity to show this is very high, very big, and give answers to consumer of what's happening, of how companies are working. There is transparency, and this is this other tool. So we have GIS, we have regulatory agencies with the prosecutor's office, everybody's, the controller's office, everybody's actually demanding information. So if we don't have standardized information will get to different agencies differently. And whose fault is that? Well, you can turn around and say, we have no system that actually standardizes information. So we need to have that information, not only internally for our own cash flow, for our results, for our reports and outcomes, but also to give correct information to consumers, to the regulators, to public agencies, meaning all stakeholders indeed. And GIS does that very well. And the other thing I heard from Nagib, it is about data governance. When I speak of GIS and GIS, that GIS, when I first heard about GIS or GIS, I heard from Najib. He also speak about metadata, which is data referencing, trackable, meaning you give that information and someone can very specifically, very accurately on the field can check to check if that piece of information is correct and if you're actually safe when it comes to actually convey information. So all reports to this particular company are very important. We have interesting people and important people at this Congress. We'll have people from Liz Water, Jaime Batista from Lisbon, Elena Alegre will also be there. They actually do asset management. So asset management that is part of this database that is actually integrated by companies. We've done the NAC analysis and major work for my operational work here, but the impact that I have when we have any breaks, we have secular, secular and very recent examples, and that impacts on our on our management, especially when we have water mains breakage and problems. So especially for great big metropolises, so we have gigantic systems that cannot fail. They cannot fail, and they are already celebrating mains that are actually celebrating their 50th anniversary. So that needs to be fully controlled. We've seen some management work. I've seen Michael also welcoming us, who's run and done I've seen the whole city being restructured, reframed. And I actually captured this idea, and I've done main waterworks. I've run risk analysis, loss analysis for for major mains. And the idea is that we can do a risk analysis for managers and for utility companies so they know timely how to assess all assets of a company. Because you see, today we are at a transition, so to speak. I don't know where we're going to go to, where we're going to get, but we need companies to work. Companies cannot just rest on top of their assets. Assets needs constant management and maintenance. That means that once you get assets in a certain status, you must know about data. You must have data control, maintenance control, and you must keep that up. I've already mentioned about what I've been doing. So thinking ahead, and Najibi, you can actually speak better to this than I, because Najibi has worked with BIM. BIM is a great modeling for GIS with BIM integration is great, BIM integration. We're speaking of the project Genius. We're also speaking about this other presentation that touched upon this, meaning the value that we have integrated city planning, one-to-one scale projecting and mapping, because today we have great data capacity and you have great headway when it comes to processing. So the industry as a whole is doing well because one industry drive the other. Plus you have machine learning, plus you have AI. So all of that helps because the AI acknowledges and recognizes patterns, and those patterns uh, those patterns can help managers to make decisions, because how can you recognize so much? I spoke about hydraulic modeling, for example. Can you imagine the amount of data? So you need tool to analyze all that. So what we have ahead. Listen, I'm gonna leave it. I am gonna wrap. I'm finished, and I'm very happy to be part of this, to join you. I'm very happy to have Najibi with us because Najibi has much to teach us, and Najibi is a very generous person indeed. So undoubtedly, I know he'll have a lot to teach us. Thank you very much. Vitor, thank you so much for your presentation. Indeed, it is great. It is awesome to be at this debate table sitting among people with so much experience. And indeed, we need to share this because it's all about breaking paradigm. There are so many people who are far, but it's not that hard. All you have to do is start. It is major work, it's big, huge indeed. But one has but managers have to have the view for implementation. As for Najib's point, indeed, I second that. Najib is the main driving force when it comes to knowledge dissemination, and his book depicts that very well. I actually helped the layout of his book with the layout of his book, so I participated very closely, and the content is very dense, very easy, and you will find a lot of answers. Najib, we have a bunch of people submitting questions, so the debate shall be very interesting indeed. But now I would like to pass the floor to Najib, the author. Najib, we have a very succinct, very brief uh, presentation on the book. And everyone, once the book is actually released, it will be available for purchase at ABES São Paulo. So from November onwards, books will be available for purchase. Now, Najibi, I'd like to pass the floor to you. Let's hear from you. What are your impressions for the book's final results, really, final outcomes? Thank you. Thank you, Pladevall. It is actually, I'm actually very grateful to be part of this event, to join ABES Sessão Brazil Water Week. This session, special sessions is one of the main important events and sessions in one of the most important events in the sector. and it's a pleasure to touch upon the content of the book. I spent 2 years working on the book, but I faced a pandemic. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to be in person, so we're doing this in virtually. But I wish we were in person. I'm gonna split my what I have to share in two parts, in two folds. The first is gonna be a bit of background with Sabesp. Second part, there will be spoilers because people are curious about the book, and I should let them know. Sabesp, GIS started out in the beginning of the 90s, 92, 93, the same initiatives by Sabesp, exactly same time when technologies started arriving in Brazil. And but it only took shape in mid late 90s. So after its first pilot, which was called actually the first GIS project. Back then, Carla, she is an engineer and she was running the project. Back then, some software suppliers and vendors were also invited, and they actually ran a GIS environment pilot environment. Back then, technology was quite not mature in comparison to, not as updated as today. So the software type of approach, a software type of tool, was before the revolution, the digital revolution. I started Sabesp in mid 90s, late 90s. Paulo Massad started a work with the metropolitan region to actually digitalize registries. So all water and sewer blueprints we started being digital. Paulo was a visionary, and with the Lex and with the past Eletro Paulo, it was a public owned company. He started digitalizing all, because everything back then was all hard copies. All plans, all blueprints were in hard copy. Plus Cesanini, with Cesanini, we started transforming this base more future, this CAD. It was based on CAD, which is a different tool. Then became more GIS ready. So we updated and digitalized the registry. We also did a trade registry, but usually trade commercial registry is a bit neglected. But network placement is as important. The people placement is actually just important. So by the end of the 90s, our main operations, the municipality of São Paulo was actually done. In 2002, we were lucky enough to kick off corporate GIS with engineer Carla, engineer Silvana, and first project was the second phase of depolluting the river. And within the works, we managed to buy everything that GIS needed. We bought software, systems, hardware. We bought software, hardware. We bought network structuring, framing, data conversion too. Outside this municipality of São Paulo, we bought 28 metropolitan region in São Paulo, so around the Tietê Basin. And back in 2003, we started working. August 2004, we had deliverables. This is the GIS environment for São Paulo municipality was done. So that was very successful, and indeed, the look to do sanitation GIS in a city as municipality as large as São Paulo was not easy task, and we managed. In 2004, we delivered the other metropolitan region, which is Sabesp GIS. So we've kept that up. It's being grown usage wise. We've added other solutions in the platform. Originally was conceived as a GIS smart. Today we have SBTL. We have other acronyms too for GIS, and we have integrated GIS with several other applications. We've interfaced with service orders, especially for water shortage, because water shortage has always been a critical process. And we had a water crisis in 2014-15, and it was very critical because population does not accept water shortages. So GIS application only grows. Now we're doing a very strong integration with regulators to integrate GIS with the active GIS ABES-SP together with SAP that is fully run and transparent for our regulators so they can actually measure the benefits that we wish. So we've invested and we can prove to the regulator that we actually need to prove our return on investment once the tariff is done. So it's everyday work really. We've been trying to help our users.
When it comes to applications, I think Victor and Elder spoke quite well. That's what GIS is. It can provide support to all the process that they discussed. What Victor said was very important regarding frameworks. It's not a property. GIS has to work, it has to be a solution that is built, but the business areas are the ones who can turn this into a result. There's no point in having the best GIS in the world if you don't have the best user. One of our main lines of work is training, educating the user, telling the user, letting them know what can they do, what can they not do, what should they do with the application. And Victor's position was very interesting with that. Alder also talked about working with open source software, which was their choice at Embasa. There's a discussion in the geo world and the geo processing. There's a false discussion regarding open source software, proprietary software. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It has to be good. It has to work. There are companies that went beyond with open software. Others want proprietary software, but there's no ideal solution. Each company needs to find what fits best their technological situation. GIS cannot be an island within the IT in a company. It needs to be integrated. So the company, if the company works better with open software, great. If not, if they need proprietary, that's still great. We also discussed that in the book as well. What we need is good applications. No matter the language, the platform, we need good applications for the problems that we face in sanitation. Going into the book a little bit, I'd like to discuss the motivations for writing the book. Just as like Elder and Victor, when I started my career at Sabesp in a very similar way, I wound up in this area basically because nobody wanted to do it. Nobody wanted to work with GIS. It was something strange. I liked it. I always liked maps since I was a kid. I was a civil engineer. So I liked this idea of seeing maps in a computer. This was very interesting. It was my personal interest, actually. So at Sabesp, I started interacting with the registering networks. I started with the commercial registry first, and I found that quite interesting. Seeing that in the computer scene, it seemed like an interesting challenge for me. But we faced a lack of material, lack of technology, lack of everything. Back then, internet was in its infancy. We're talking about 1999. We didn't have a lot of material on the internet. We did not have as many publications. You didn't have much. So not only us at Sabesp, but a few other professionals at Sabesp, we literally had to start from scratch. We started everything from scratch. We thought about data modeling from scratch. We started thinking about the applications. What should we do with GIS? We started basically from scratch. We made a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of trial and error. But we try on one side, see what works. We continue, we keep going. Here we are today. We wanted to record that experience. That's why we wrote the book. So that other people, other users, other companies would not have to go through the same challenge, that they would have some reference in the market. This is no academic treatise. I wouldn't see it this way. It's a practical book so that technicians, managers, and decision makers in sanitation companies may become familiarized with this technology to use it in their sanitation company, whether it's a small, medium, or large company, a municipal, state, or a private company. We have common problems in sanitation in Brazil. This is basically a roadmap, both for the implementation of GIS systems, for those who have not implemented them yet, and to make the current GIS more operational so that your applications can have more results for your company. This book aimed at covering the lack of bibliography that we have. Brazil, we're currently discussing the framework, the regulatory framework, but Brazil, that's something that was quite notable. In 50 years, we provided sanitation, whether we're talking about water or sewage, to 120 million people. 120 million people were connected to the Brazilian sanitation system in the last 50 years. This is the population of United Kingdom and France. Did France and United Kingdom implement their system in 50 years? No, they certainly took longer. This is an industry where we work a lot. We work really hard. Child mortality in Brazil in the 70s, it was around 100 live births per thousand. I could be wrong, but I think we've reduced it now to 8 to 10 per thousand. So sanitation operators in Brazil are particularly responsible for this progress. However, a lot has been done, but very few has been written. We write very little. We get lost in the daily operations. The academy is interested in other issues, and we produce little material in the sanitation industry. There's a few books, but there's not much. ABES came to fill in that gap. ABES for many years now is a great provider, a great motivator for the dissemination of sanitation in publications. With a few other entities, such as ABES-SP here in São Paulo, we also have some interesting work. But beyond that, in the publisher market, you will see very few references to it. And we have more than enough topics to discuss. We have histories to tell. We have teachings and lessons to teach to everyone, for our colleagues throughout Brazil. So my book wants to fill just a little tiny gap in this entire world of lack of knowledge of sanitation in Brazil, and help the companies in this new regulatory framework. We'll have new players, new investments, new operations, new professionals will be joining the market, and they will need knowledge. They will need to get a roadmap to follow, to guide them, coming from professionals that are more experienced in the sector. So that is my contribution, to help the industry overcome this challenge and make sanitation universal. The society no longer accepts not having water and sewage. So, let's make it universal in 2000 and something. No. We want this in this generation. The society wants to see Brazil with universal sanitation. It is an immense challenge, particularly in the most vulnerable regions in the country. And I believe GIS can help a lot in the implementation of systems, in the operation, in the daily lives of sanitation companies. We divided into 3 main parts. We discussed a few concepts. If you come from geoprocessing, this part might be a little boring because it's the work that the information they already know about. We discuss cartography, we discuss software, we're talking about geodesia. There's a boring part, but it's important for people in sanitation who did not study that in college, they're not trained about it. They see a little bit of topography maybe, but people in sanitation do not see that. And it's interesting to discuss this. It's the basis for all geoprocessing solutions. Then we talk about the applications, which is really the core of the book, and I'll go a little bit deeper into this. And in the end, we talk about the implementation of the GIS system. As we've mentioned in the first part, in the concepts, we investigate when should we use cartography, topography. We discuss the use of imaging. No one thinks about having GIS without having aerial images. It was so expensive in the 90s, but now everybody uses Google Map and Google Earth. You want to see the interaction with the territory. Viewing the territory helps you see the geographic situation where our assets are inserted. We talk about the differences from when to use different types of software, different types of program. We have commercial aspects that are quite important when we talk to vendors. We have registered a little of our experience from our knowledge with the market. We try to tell it from our view, how does it work commercially. We discuss the GNSS systems. Everyone uses GPS on their phones. Everyone uses Waze or other delivery apps that work with geolocation. In our sector, this is essential. I mentioned José Chames a lot. One of the few books you will find on Amazon from GIS application in water and sanitation. He says that 80% of the information in sanitation are georeferenceable. Everything can be. Connections, mains, companies, clients, everything. 80% of our business is in space. So how could we not have a system representing this? You need to have something like this. It's not an option. And GIS can represent the spatial information in a satisfactory manner. Numbers do not have this ability. There's no longer a discussion of having or not having GIS. And there's no excuse for not having a GIS. We'll discuss that at the end of the book. Then we go into applications. We talk about data modeling. This is one of the most important areas of GIS. How do you model it? Do you have market models? Should you do your own model for your company? We discuss some of the pros and cons. There is no ideal solution, I need to reinforce. Each company has its characteristics and its needs, and you have to respect that. You shouldn't throw everything you have in the garbage bin and just say, oh, I'll buy a new solution. No. Everything has to have its own place, each piece of data. GIS is beautiful, it has a map. There's a whole trend of wanting to use everything in GIS. Is that good practice? No, not really. Otherwise, it will be difficult to manage it later. You should keep each type of data on its place and then use integration platforms to provide data to each specific system. We're talking about operation, billing, commercial, maintenance. These data need to be in their systems and just be integrated. In another chapter, we talk about data conversion. Currently, if you already have GIS implemented, your data is born digitally already, but if not, how can you migrate from paper copies to digital files? What do I need to look for? So in those last few years, from 1999 to 2005, there's still a reality for a lot of companies. There's a lot of files that are still in paper. We talk about CARD versus GIS. These are just different softwares with different ideas. But everyone who's using GIS has used CAD. So what is good of this culture? What is good? What is bad? So these are things that we try to place under right positions. Then we get into the noblest part of the GIS, which is asset management, technical and operational registration. What is it? What is it for? What is the history of it? Where did GIS come into it? What does it bring into the table? This is very important. We cannot have a GIS system without technical registration behind it. We need to have it. So we discuss why it has to be used. Then we move to water operation engineering, another very noble application of GIS. I think Elder mentioned. We also have an application for maneuvers at sub-ASP. It's essential. This happens every day and it has an impact in the population. Part of the population will have a water shortage due to these operations. And GIS allows us to be faster and reduces the impact on the population. And regulators are more and more vigilant for it in terms of impact in services. We talked about integration with data historians. Everything that is produced in the systems, GIS is the only one that can represent this on the map so that we can understand like a water shortages, excessive pressure, too few pressure. I think this is one of the noblest uses that we can show. We can show the results GIS can bring. Then we talk about sewer management. We have very few cases in this area, but it's another area where GIS has a lot of potential for results. Sewage systems are quite severe, quite critical. You cannot have overflows, you cannot have breakage. Our clients are very sensitive. No one wants to see sewage overflowing. And GIS allows us to have this knowledge of the territory, so you can know where you have the greater possibility of having failures. You can cross incidents. You can act preventively. We have few cases in this area, but this is one of the areas where we have the largest potential for gains. Let's talk about hydraulic modeling. It's also a noble application. 80% of the work of modeling is bringing data together, creating a data model, having adequate topology. It's an input so the modeling software can work. We say how just should be prepared to work with modeling. We discuss based on the book by Hydraulic Modeling in GIS, and it discusses how can we prepare GIS to provide support for hydraulic modeling depending on the software you're using. The user can see that it will save work. If you do a good modeling, you will make it a lot easier. He's the expert in this area. He can tell us how much the impact of having a good GIS system. Each client is a point in space, but behind each client you have a meter, you have a consumption profile, you have a rate, you have bills, you have social issues. All of this has to be set in space. The effort that Elder made to have the reference of all connections. Sub-ASP has 9 million clients, so we should have at least 6 million in GIS. We still need to connect some in the countryside, but you need I think we have a little problem. While we
Voltamos.
Muito bem. Não sei quanto foi perdido aí, qualquer coisa vocês me falam. Coisa do home office.
Você estava falando da integração de dados, a preparação de dados para modelagem, a importância disso, e aí depois travou mais.
And then you froze. Oh, then it was just a short job. Then I started talking about the use of GIS in commercial management. Going back to what elders said about georeferencing connections, behind each connection that we georeference, we have clients with a certain rate, certain social characteristics. It might be a home, might be a business, might have a discount, they have a consumption profile. When we look at it in the map, we can see things in a different light. Specifically, when we're thinking about low-income areas, what are the areas that are most vulnerable? This is essential so that we can know what we're dealing with. And there's a lot of application in this area. GIS is quite good for the commercial areas. ABES-SP has advanced far with it. Our commercial areas are maybe the biggest users of GIS. It's where we see the most interesting applications. Then we talk about the management of enterprises. All assets start as that, even from the smaller to the bigger ones. And it starts in a map, in a territory. It needs a map to be implemented. I talk about the integration with BIM to improve the issue of visualization, the evolution of the programs. We're moving to BIM, which allows us to see things way beyond itself. We can see the life cycle of the development as a whole. Conception, the work, the contracting and decontracting. How can you have a relationship between GIS and BIM? We discuss a little bit of that. Where does BIM come in? Where does GIS come in? What is the best way to create synergy between both technologies? People who work with BIM needs to learn from people that work with geoprocessing. Nothing against them, but I'm an engineer and I can talk about this. Márcio can say that as well. We're not very connected to database. We weren't taught that in university. So we have a little bit of difficulty understanding databases, tables, relationships. So this is interesting. CAD was great. You open it, you draw, great. When you start about using BIM on a database and sharing with the user, this is a little weird for us. And the geography professionals, they went through that, but where geoprocessing started, they already have that in their heads a little bit. Because geographic space is divided into classes, they already think about that. You have a river, you have a body of water, you have a basin. They're used to classify the knowledge in a structured way, which is what a database does. So people from geography were able to get together with people from IT and do geoprocessing. So in the 60s and 70s, and engineering needs to do the same. They need to talk to IT to understand how can you transform that drawing, that plan that we are so used to seeing in something that is more structured in terms of information. And that's what BIM does. But we still need to discuss even more. And people with georeferencing learned it in the past, geoprocessing, and nobody does a geographic information system that is isolated, working in a single machine with a user. No, you have that on a database. We have data governance. We have this integrated so the whole company can use. There's no longer isolated users. There's no silos. That's what BIM is trying to do. Then we talk about regulation, which is an important topic in our sector in the last decade. It's still quite unequal in Brazil. Some regions have moved forward a bit more. GIS can help with regulatory issues, with surveillance, with creating our asset base to monitor your investment. It is important to mention about it, to discuss it. Geotechnologies are available in the market. If we do not use them, our competitors or adversaries or our regulators, they have those tools available. So we need to have the same tools that they do so we can work here. So in sanitation, if you don't have GIS, the regulator will have it, okay? And they will use it against you. So it's important for us to use it as well. We can be one step ahead of regulation so we can be quick in responding to them. We discussed this on this chapter. Then we started on the third stage, the implementation. What are the challenges to implement it? I think most of the companies in sanitation here in Brazil, are you hearing me well? My connection is dropping a little. I think most of the operations in Brazil already have GIS systems implemented in different levels of maturity. Some are a bit more simple, some a bit more advanced. So we provide a roadmap for those who have not even started yet. But for those who have already started, we give the path to continue to face the challenges in their companies. We talk about the basic project, a pilot project, the GIS team. What type of team do you need? What is the profile? Planning. One thing is planning, another one is putting into practice, daily operations. Even if you're operating, installing a new system, you need to continue operating. How can you keep this? What are the practical implications? Everyone talks about GIS implementation, but nobody discussed the post-implementation. They talk about, oh, okay, you've released it, you launched it, here's launch date, here are the pictures, what do we do now? No, that's when the issues start. GIS has a life of its own. Users will want more. Users are always asking for more. Márcio, who's our user, he asked from us, oh, can we do this? Can we do that? So we're always trying to go after it. So the post-implementation is the traumatic stage, where you go beyond the implementation, where everything is kind of controlled, and you dive into reality. In reality, it will have good and bad moments. So there are challenges to be overcome all the time. And we have to work with everyone to try to solve all issues. We also discussed the partnership between IT and business. Elder is from IT, right? He mentioned it quite well. This is never a 100% peaceful relationship. These are professionals that come from different backgrounds. They have different roles in the company. But there's no way around it. They need each other. GIS is what it is because of IT. It helped a lot. GIS only got to where it is because of IT. They helped us in development. It needs specific hardware. It needs network. It needs a specific network and infrastructure. We don't understand anything, so IT is essential to help us with it. And they also have to understand our role. They have to know that we understand the business to try and improve applications, respect application life cycle. These are two areas that have to understand each other. This was very difficult at first, but I feel that currently this has already reached some maturity. We have some issues from time to time, but we have a greater maturity that parts have to talk. We talk about this a lot. Lastly, we close the book discussing the future. What is waiting for us in the future? We start making predictions. Making predictions in the technology area is quite difficult. And so it's very difficult. I didn't go too far. I have some predictions at max from 5 years out. There are some market trends that are starting to consolidate, some faster. So GIS will have to provide some things in 5 years. And so it's very difficult to go with any predictions beyond 5 years. That's at GIS throughout the years, both in Brazil and abroad. It has evolved quite a bit in all sectors where it's working in. Sanitation is still lagging. It's still the underdog in infrastructure. People who work with power, electricity have GIS a lot more integrated than we do, but we can look at what they did in their industry, in their sector. The book brings some of the experience we had in power and distribution, and we say that that's where we can learn a lot about GIS because they have similar issues, and it's an interesting benchmark to use in sanitation. I also discussed this a little bit in this chapter and in others. Well, I think I'm drawing closer to the end. That's it. Soon we'll have the launch with Pladevall. But I'd like to say to thank a few people. It only exists because of some people. One of them is Paulo Massato, our vice director in the metropolitan region. He wrote the preface for this book. My manager, who together with Carla created GIS and ABES-SP. Nothing would be here. We would not have been having this conversation if Paulo did not have the vision he had back then. I'd like to thank ABES for wanting to produce this book, especially with a pandemic coming in the middle of it, which made things a little bit more difficult, but thank you very much, ABES. Our sponsors were essential. Producing a book in Brazil is an adventure, especially a technology book. A GIS book needs to have maps and images and colors, otherwise it will be too boring. If it weren't for a sponsor, this book would be very expensive for final consumers. It wouldn't reach its goals, considering Brazilian market reality. So the sponsorship was essential to keep it to a moderate cost so that the sanitation sector can enjoy the knowledge. I'd like to thank my bosses at ABES-SP, Marcelo Xavier, Marcelo Panarziera. A lot of what is in the book came from the challenges that they gave me, and I hope I met all of these challenges. I'd like to thank Engineer Kamel from ABES-SP. He helped me in review and improve reading the book. He's a professor at the Polytechnical School. He's a great man. Thank my team, all of the members of my team. They helped me a lot. We learned together. We learn when we're teaching, and when we have the opportunity to teach people and train people, we learn a lot. Our teams wind up being in our little laboratory. When you don't teach them well, you need to teach them again. A lot of the experiences in the book were based on it. I'd like to thank my family. There were a lot of moments where I could be with my family, but I was working and they supported me. Nope, no man is an island. Nothing comes from working alone. This came from the support, from the help of everyone. Thank you for everyone who participated in this session. So I'd like to pass the floor on to Pladevall. Congratulations, Nagib. Great presentation. And people are asking if there are technical elements in the book. Yes, it does, but it's not the goal. We're not going to, as Márcio, as when he started with topography, geodesic, DZIC. The idea is to contribute as if it were a manual for those who want to start implementing. We have a lot of tips for it, and we have the steps for those who are already implementing and some tips to optimize the implementation. I think, just as Nagib said, GIS, you have no way back after it. If you implemented it, it's continual work. You can't drop the ball because you need to have a lot of energy. And the major advantage that I see from this tool is that it can be an integrating tool. It can bring together all areas of the company, particularly today with the possibility of integrating with modeling and operational engineering. All information with databases, bringing this to thematic maps. So this is a unique selling point. I have lots of comments and lots of questions. So first I'd like to say the following. As engineers, we try to foresee everything. The chat asked us to do a draw here and give away a book. Roberto and Sueli have already provided a form. If you want to participate in the draw, fill in the form you got on the chat, send it to us, and we will do a draw early in November when the book will eventually reach the shelves and be on sale. They asked if there's a link to order it, and no, because it will be on the virtual bookstore at ABES, and it will be available from November onwards. I will move quickly. There's a lot of thank you messages, a lot of congratulations coming to you, Nagib. I will mention it quickly and I'll go to the questions so we can answer at least a couple questions. We won't be able to answer all questions, but we will try to choose a few that we can answer here with our speakers today. just to inform you, it's been quite successful. We have 250 people online right now. So, Cynthia C. de Viroli, Eliana Kitahara, Fabio Nóbrega, Professor Jairo Tardelli, who's also here with us, Julio Matos, Rosie Bittencourt, Jaffa. They send their congratulations to you, to Nagib, to ABES for their initiative. What else do we have here? Let me take a quick look. It's not hard. It's not easy to be an online moderator. We already said that we are going to give away a book, give away 1 copy. We will not have a digital version, right? We will only have the hard copy, but as Nagib said, we're providing a subsidy in the value of the book. It will be around 50 reais for people who are not members of ABES, and with a 20% discount for members. So it's being subsidized by the people who believed in our work and sponsored the book. So let's go into a few questions, Nagib, and I'll ask a few questions, and we will stop, answer a few of them, and then we will go to the launch, okay? We have a few specific questions about the GIS at Embasa. I will not go too deep into it. I will talk about the overview. Here we have a question. In major cities, it's already quite well developed, but in small cities, a consortium would be necessary to reduce the cost for implementation. It comes from Maria Bernadette Guimarães. Another question from Yogi. Is it possible to detect leaks with aerial sensors, with multispectral aerial sensors, or do you still have to do fine-tuning for this technology? You went a bit beyond the scope, but I don't know if you could answer it. And let's see what else we have here. The management of droughts could be better with a system for prevention of losses and water crisis per drainage basin. This is another application for the management of drainage basins. Alessandro Niz is congratulating you for the book. Who else? Ana Maria Pereira Marques. Recently, I read an article about GIS and SCADA to enable efficient operations. I was fascinated by it. What do you think about this connection in Brazil? Is it coming in the future, or do you think it's too far away? Maybe there's something in the book about it. You can comment on it. I think it's interesting to see what everyone is talking, everyone's saying. This is an important topic for the three of you. The GIS solution is still seen as an expense for sanitation companies. What is the return that these solutions can have? I'd like to hear the three of you, but I give my opinion. GIS solutions should be considered investments. I think that this panel is an event to shift that paradigm. What else do we have here? There's a specific question from Eliseu Dias. How SABESP maintains or provide data from regional areas, particularly on the countryside. Nagib can answer that because it's an in-house question. We have another question from Monica from São Paulo. How can GIS in sanitation companies, particularly with water and sewage, is there planning involvement with planning for urban planning due to the networks being undersized? I think I'll stop here, otherwise we won't be able to provide answers. And if we have a little bit more time, we can come back to them. I'm sorry if I didn't mention you here, but The chat is quite active. A lot of people participation, congratulating you, talking about the initiative. So first, I'll go to Elder, see if you want to discuss, to talk about the idea. What does Embasa think? Is GIS a cost or an investment? This is a very common debate. Even though we use open software, we need to invest in GPS, we need to invest in training in our team. So what we need to do as GIS vendors is we have to convince them it's an investment. I think one way to do it is to have presentations with maps showing that, look, this region, I could get this number of clients back because I saw that on the map. Or I could provide better service because I can translate that into a map. So this is the path we have to follow to get managers and final users to understand that this is an investment, and this has to be part of a company's culture. This is not easy, but should be done visually. Saying, see, without this region, I wouldn't have this analysis without the GIS with the common system. The advantage, moving on to Victor now, when you show the map, the managers get excited, and that helps us on selling the importance of GIS. I'd like to hear from Victor now. That is true. What I see, and from the experience we have by talking with colleagues, from people with CAESB, Carlos Eduardo, discussing the investment made, and it's a fact. At first, right from the outset, you can recover revenue, you can have a control of losses, and then things start stabilizing, and the managers start thinking that that is already done, and you have to press on it. You have to continue to provide returns, and the system is costly. Then you need to maintain that. But you also can see, which is why applications are so important, in Nagib's book that provides an overview, that you can get to that point, you can do the work, you can do the registry, you pay for a one-year project, you pay for the costs of an entire investment that has been made. This is something we have in our business. We have areas that can be improved that will have major returns. And moreover, if we think about investment and the regulatory demands, the demands from society itself, the system needs our help and helps us to be transparent and control our activities and our assets. So this has some value. So this is the investment part. There's the other part that is commercial return, operating return with management. We need to reinforce, repeatedly defend it, but there's this other side, which is contributing to companies' management and to transparency. So that the regulatory agencies, for the regulatory issues, to present correct information. Thank you, Victor. Let's hear from Nagib about these questions, if he wants to add anything else. There was a question here, but I want you to give the answer. Are there other publications at ABES about GIS? We did not have any other books, but you could give people a few tips. Fabio Yogi asked if there are any other books, other literature in Brazil about GIS that you would recommend. Or you can tell him later. ABES published a book in '96, I think, from Márcio Pereira, where he was discussing the implementation of GIS that they did at Embasa in Santo André. That system is no longer there. The company has changed, but he discussed how did that implementation go. It is a reference. although the technology has evolved quite a bit, so it's no longer applicable. But in the national market, when you talk about GIS, there's a lot. When it comes to sanitation, not so much. I hope my book will encourage more people to write. I hope there will be people criticizing it, adding. Maybe we'll have further editions in the future. When it comes to being an investment or an expense, most of our assets are buried. We cannot see them. After you put asphalt on the street, how can you prove that you invested? We spend hundreds of millions of dollars in creating our networks, and we have no registers of that, no records. No, you have to do it. And GIS is where you can have that information. Compared to the costs of our developments, GIS has a very low cost. Regulators pay attention to it. We have to prove our investments to the regulator. I have to say, oh, I invested X in this, the work is here. You cannot show to the regulator. You can have to provide evidence of that. And regulators accept evidences. And if you don't have the evidence, the regulator will deny it. So just this, the issues you can have just from not showing you delivered it, it's more than enough to pay for the implementation. There's no question about it. Not to mention the additional benefits. Everyone uses Waze, uses iFood, you use Uber. You have geolocation on all of that. Can you really think about not having this type of technology on GIS? It's mandatory. We are inserted in digital transformation, about digital transformation in sanitation, having a map where you can have your reference assets. This is what the sector is expecting from us. Pladevall, just to give you a quick contribution, we have other speakers, but as ABES, I wanted to put something forth. As said, we need to, there's a lot of developments. We need to have quality projects, that this is important to have our developments and our works. And as Nagib said, the amount is not too high. It's the amount for the management, for managing the assets. So here we are adding a new situation. You need to build it, you need to have a quality project, and you need to have good management. And today with the smartphones, GIS it's also used in client relationship. You can download it on a phone immediately. The information can also goes to the client management process. It goes from the asset to the client, so you can truly have quick information, and it's very important. So you can do it daily with a cell phone. You can download information immediately, and it goes to the call centers and companies. I am biased, Márcio, because I think that the benefits are immeasurable. We can integrate anything we can. I just like to comment here a message from the chat. Everyone is congratulating the event, saying it was great. And Ivan Paiva Jr. said, we need to have more events on it. I'll leave an invitation here for Nagib, Victor, and Elder. We have our publishers here. In November or December, you're already invited to do it. We need to get a morning at ABES Conecta and have a discussion on it, because this is a fascinating topic. And Fernando Dias, Angela Lima, congratulating us. A lot of people congratulating us on the event. And I'll discuss the formalities of the book launch, because as organizers, we have to do some requirements with our sponsors. So here we have the official launch. If we have some time left after it, we'll answer a few more questions. And we have to end at noon. So I'll move on to the bureaucratic part now. So I'd like to invite all of you to the launch of the book, of Nagib's book. I will do a little promotion here. And to show our sponsors now. Just a moment. I need to share my screen. So I'd like to formally thank our sponsors. Pladevall, I don't see it. I don't see it. I only see a white screen. We only see a white screen. Let me see what is happening here. Can you see it now? Now everything went back to normal. You stopped sharing. Let's try it again. Could someone share it, please? I don't know if anyone in our public relations can share it, maybe. I don't know why, but I have another screen showing up. I don't know who could help us. When I do share screen, it says whiteboard Zoom. I don't know how to close it. Let's see. Let's see if I can close it here. When I close the whiteboard Zoom, I can't minimize it, I can't close it. When I close it, it stops sharing. Let's do this the Brazilian way, maybe. If you want me to show the book. So I have the obligation here. Can you see it now? Do you see my screen? No. You're still on the white screen. When I close it, it goes. Try it again. Could you send it to Diego? He can show it. Send it to Diego. We still have a little bit of time. We can do it. You have his email, right? So while he sends it, I'll make a little comment here. Might be one of the most experienced here. You can see my white hairs. I drew cartography maps. How would you store that? You had map libraries. You would do it in pencil, draw the rivers. A lot of people are not even familiar with that. You draw the rivers in blue. Crests, you have to draw it. You have to draw trees. And we had a manual technique to do that. With technology and GIS, we evolved in cartography. And you've mentioned all this issue of the commercial side, the database, which is Elder's specialty, getting things to integrate between the geodesic plant, cartography, and the database. This is a whole other science in itself. Márcio, more than that, you're a GIS user. You have a business unit with a lot of connections, over 1 million connections. Can you tell us how's the GIS coming from the executive point of view, from a business person? How do you see it as a helpful tool? The GIS, as you said, for the user is amazing. In our daily operations, you cannot even think about operating a system, operating day to day, without having this type of system. It is too important. How can you operate the water network connected to several facilities with VRP, electromechanical equipment. How can you operate that using SCADA? How can you do that without being connected? Another issue, you have to be up to date. And the clients are connected to our network. So you have clients connected. If they are connected to you, you need to have that response. But it is an excellent question. There we go, Pladevall. You can go. We can see now the sponsors on screen. Now that we've overcome our technical issues, you can see now this is the page of the book that shows our sponsors. And to meet our responsibility with the managers of the sponsors, we need to thank our diamond sponsors, ABES-SP, that sponsored a large portion of the book, and the gold sponsors, Sanepar, ABES-SP, and Imaging. Both ABES-SP and Sanepar are very active in diffusing and spreading knowledge. They have worked in several books with us, the HD, the non-destructive testing. ABES-SP is another important partner, an advocate for sharing knowledge, and Imaging, that is the company that has paid software, proprietary software for georeferencing. Once more, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors. I'd like to say that without you, we would not be able to complete this challenge and to provide knowledge to our community. As I said, this book will be available for sale from November on, and you will be able to buy it through the ABES online bookstore. So after we thank the sponsors, I'd like to talk about the book. We have a text here to discuss how important it is. This is a topic that has never been discussed before in the Brazilian publishing market. It is one of the few works published worldwide. Nagib did a survey, and according to his research, there are no books focused on GIS and sanitation. So this will actually have worldwide impact. The book comes from the experience of the author and wants to share with the operators the proposals for GIS applications in all different business areas, such as water and sewage operations engineering, management of assets, regulation, and other activities, and projects that are related according to the needs of the companies. The author is Nagib Abrahão, an engineer who's here with us, manager of geoinformation at ABES-SP, with almost 20 years in the management of corporate GIS and in the application of this technology in sanitation. So we can say that the book has been officially launched. I want Nagib to give us a few words, show us the book. He has one of the copies already, one of the printed copies. I'd like you to say a few words about this, the launch of this book. So here's the book, everyone. I hope everyone can see it. Can you see it fine? Can you all see it? Yes, we see it, Nagib. Great. Once more, thank you, ABES. Thank you for embracing this challenge of producing this book. And I hope this will be an incentive for the whole sanitation system in Brazil. Not just discussing GIS. I'm not just talking to Victor and Elder. The whole sector, in other areas of sanitation, people in operations and maintenance, people who work at services. We have a lot of stories to share, things to teach to operators. There is a whole generation of people who are retiring and new professionals coming into the market. We have immense educational deficiencies in Brazil, and we have to do our part. We have to teach, we have to train our professionals so we can deliver to the population what they want, which is a good universal sanitation system that has accessible, affordable price, that works well, and that answers the demands of society of Brazil. We work for them. I hope that the book will be just that, an incentive, so we will have new writers that will talk to ABES and say, hey, I have this idea, I have this
I am
project.
sure they will help us wonderfully. Rival, the whole all directors, all leaders, they will help you. It, I know there are different stakes that AB has been working. So by working well, there will be no lacking of people to get in touch with. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Najib. Now I have the final messages.
Mais debate, né?
Unfortunately, we don't have time for further debate, so I'd like to invite our partners, Vitor, Elder. Let's have a specific webinar only particular on that because we have a lot of ground to cover. Najib, let's get Abis Connecta. Let's find the right time to get this and plan ahead because this is a very exciting topic. And we've got so much to do in Brazil. It's a major challenge. And Abis, we're experts in the area. We can contribute a lot in Brazil. I think this is our work. And to share knowledge is what we all have in mind and want to do. So I want to thank all our guests, Elder Aragão, Deal Processing Manager, Vitor Faria, who is a consultant at Cedae, Nagib. Nagib is a author of the book, and Gil, manager, and everybody who's followed us live. This video will be made available on our channel on YouTube, free. People feel free to access, to share. On the Brazil Water Week website, you can sign up. Please sign up for the next sessions, and the link with the program is being informed on the chat. There, you can also sign up. You can also register for Brazil Water Week from the 26th until the 30th. I've heard about it. It's very complete, very thorough. For those who can do it, do not miss out. It's going to be a major, wonderful experience to be experienced Brazil Water Week. Our last and final session this week is going to be today, this afternoon. We're going to speak about regulation, about policies. The topic of the event is actually policies, institutions, and regulations. So this webinar is going to be very exciting in the afternoon from 2 to 4. Do not miss out. We're going to speak about planning, regulation. Just sign up and join us. Before we I just want to again thank Márcio and everybody who's been with us. Let's hear final remarks. Márcio, let's hear from you your final remarks. Absolutely, thank you. I want to thank for everybody who's joined us, who heard from us. Nagib, Abi, São Paulo actually approached me and I said, listen, count on us. Let's publish the book. This is really important for the sector so that we can develop the entire sanitation sector and to actually evolve and get more training, more knowledge done. Thank you, Nagib. Thank you, Luiz, everybody. Elder, the floor is yours. Hey, thank you, everybody, for the invite. And let's keep driving. Let's keep pushing this forward. Let's get GIS on the road. And I also would like to thank for the invite. I would like to let everybody know I have a free course available that has the same objective to foster and inform about GIS. We have a technology deficit. Now imagine the level of deficit that we have GIS. So much ground to cover. Thank you again. Vitor, your final words. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm grateful to be here with you, Márcio, Pladevall, Aragão, Nagib. It is very interesting indeed to have this debate. The book undoubtedly will be very successful, with great help. Now that I've learned more about it, it really covers the right points. It really touches, approaches the right topics. Undoubtedly will be our Bible, so to speak. It will be a major, most important book, especially at this point with registration. For several other areas, it will be very useful indeed. So I would like to thank everybody for the opportunity, and we'll see you again with next time we get together. Thank you.
Nagib.
Thank you, Vitor. Thank you, Nagib. Nagib, your final words. Again, I want to thank ABES, Márcio, Pladevall, Vitor, Elder, who really shed a lot of light, and to the audience who's followed us. I promise I'll address the questions that have been submitted on the chat box. And ultimately, thank you very, very much. I really hope it's useful for the sector. Look, Márcio, I have the one question. Don't you think ABES should have a camera, a technical chamber for georeferencing? Here's just an idea I'm throwing out there. Maybe we could integrate put together all professionals that can contribute to society. I think ABES has exactly this role. So here's the seed of an idea, a chamber, a technical chamber for a GIS specifically. Guys, thank you so much. Congratulations, everybody. And the link is going to be made available on YouTube. Do not miss out. Watch it and come join us this afternoon. Enjoy. Cheers. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you.